Emerson DIXON memory. Laundry bin lands uneasily at the civic leaders and supports figures filling the Cotton Ballroom in Cleveland. They had come from across the nation. I was the bandwidth's featured entertainer. Laundry, an 18-year-old high school senior from Monroe, Louisiana, was the evening's honored guest. Nervous, I asked the handsome young man in his starched white shirt and branded principal. A little, he whispered to me. 1 month earlier, Laundry had been just one more black student attending a predominantly white southern school. Although most of his friends and classmates were white, Laundry's race had never been an issue. Then on April 17, 1991, Laundry's black skin provoked an incident that made nationwide news. Ladies and gentlemen, the MC said, how special this Laundry feel. As the audience stood applauding, Laundry walked to the microphone and began his story. I love golf, he said quietly. For the past 2 years, I have been a member of the St. Frederick's High School golf team. And though I was the only black member, I have always felt at home playing at mostly white country clubs across Louisiana. The audience leaned forward. Even the waiters and busboys stopped to listen. As I listened, a memory buried in my heart. Since childhood began fighting its way to life. Our team had driven from Monroe, Laundry continued. When we arrived at the Caldwell Parish Country Club in Columbia, we walked into the facility. Laundry and his teammates were too absorbed to notice the conversation between a man and the St. Frederick Athletic Director James Murphy. After disappearing into the clubhouse, Murphy distinctly declares, I want to see the seniors, he said. On the table, his face seemed strained as he gathered the 4 students, including Laundry. I don't know how to tell you this, he said, but Caldwell Parish Country Club is reserved for whites only. Murphy paused and looked at Laundry. His teammates glanced at each other in disbelief. I want you seniors to decide what our response should be, Murphy continued. He believed we forfeit this tournament. If we stay, Laundry can't play. As I listened, my own childhood memory from 32 years ago brought me. In 1959, I was 13 years old, a poor black kid living with my mother and stepfather in a small black ghetto on Long Island, New York. My mother worked nights in a hospital and my stepfather drove a car truck. Needless to say, our standard of living was nevertheless when my 15th grade teacher announced a graduation trip to Washington, D.C. Never crossed my mind that I would be left behind. Besides a complete tour of the nation's capital, we would visit the Glen Echo amusement park in Maryland. In my imagination, Glen Echo was Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm and Magic Mountain rolled into one. My heart beat wildly. I raced home to deliver the memorandum letter describing the journey. But when my mother saw how much the trip would cost, she just shook her head and couldn't afford it. After feeling sad for 10 seconds, I decided to try to fund the trip myself. For the next 8 weeks, I sold candy bars door to door, delivered newspapers and mowed lawns. 3 days before the deadline, I made just barely enough. I was gone. The day of the trip, trembling with excitement, I climbed onto the train. Our hotel was not far from the White House. My roommate was Frank Miller, the son of a businessman. Leaning together out of our window and dropping water balloons on tourists quickly cemented our new friendship. Every morning, almost 100 of us loaded noisily onto our bus for another adventure. We sang our school 5-song dozens of times en route to Arlington National Cemetery, and even on an afternoon cruise down the Potomac River. We visited the Lincoln Memorial twice, once in the daylight, the second time at dusk. My classmates and I fell silent as we walked in the shadows of those 36 marble columns, one for every state in the Union that Lincoln labored to preserve. I stood next to Frank at the base of the 19-foot-seated statue. Spotlights made the white Georgian marble seem to glow. Together we read those famous words from Lincoln's speech, and it is the remembering the most bloody battle in the war between the states. We here highly resolve that these that shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have no birth of freedom. As Frank motioned me into place to take my picture, I took one last look at Lincoln's face. He seemed alive and so terribly sad. The next morning I understood a little better why he wasn't smiling. Clifton, a chaplain, said, "Could I see you for a minute?" The other guys at my table, especially Frank, couldn't really. We had been talking about the previous night's carrot water balloons hit on a fat lady and her food. It was a stupid, dangerous act, but luckily nobody got hurt. We were celebrating our escape from punishment when the chaplain asked to see. We had been talking about the previous night's carrot water balloons hit on a fat lady and her food. It was a stupid, dangerous act, but luckily nobody got hurt. We were celebrating our escape from punishment when the chaplain asked to see. Clifton, she began, "Do you know about the Mason-Dixon line?" "No," I said, wondering what this had to do with the drenching fat ladies. Before the Civil War, she explained, the Mason-Dixon line was originally the boundary between Maryland and Pennsylvania, the dividing line between the slave and free states. Having escaped one disaster, I could feel another brewing. I noticed that her eyes were damp and her hands were shaking. Today, she continued, the Mason-Dixon line is a kind of invisible border between the North and South. When you cross that invisible line out of Washington, D.C. into Maryland, things change. There was an obvious drift to this conversation, but I wasn't following it. Why did she look and sound so nervous? Glencoe Amusement Park is in Maryland, she said at last, and the management doesn't allow it close inside. She stared at me in silence. I was still grinning and nodding when the meeting finally sank. "You mean I can't go to the park?" I stuttered. "Because I'm a girl." She nodded slowly. "I'm sorry, Clifton," she said, taking my hand. "You will have to stay in the hotel tonight. Why don't you and I watch a movie on television?" I walked to the elevators feeling confusion, disbelief, anger, and deep sadness. "What happened, Clifton?" Frank said. "When I got back to the freedom with the black lady held on us." Without saying a word, I walked over to my bed, lay down, and began to cry. Frank was stunned to silence. Junior high boys didn't cry, at least not in front of each other. It was in just missing the class adventure that made me feel so sad. For the first time in my life, I was learning what it felt like to be with them. Of course, there was discrimination in the North, but the color of my skin had never officially kept me out of a coffee shop, a church, or amusement park. Even Frank whispered, "What is the matter? You won't let me go to play Echo Park tonight?" I said. "Because of the what we do," you asked. "No," I answered, "because I am a Negro." "Well, that's a relief," Frank said, and then he laughed, obviously relieved to have escaped the punishment for our paper deliverance. I thought it was serious. Wiping away the tears with my sleeve, I stared at him. "It is serious. They don't let Negroes into the bar. They can't go with you," I shouted. "That's pretty damn serious to me." I was about to wipe the silly grin off Frank's face with a claw to his claw when I heard him say, "Then I won't go either." For an instant we just froze. Then Frank grinned. I will never forget that moment. Frank was just a kid. He wanted to go to that amusement park as much as I did, but there was something even more important than a class night out. Still, he didn't explain or expand. The next thing I knew, the room was filled with the kids listening to Frank. "They don't allow Negroes in the park," he said, "so I'm staying with a friend." "Me too," a second boy said. "Those jerks," a third muttered. "I'm with you, Clifton." My heart began to race. Suddenly I was not alone. A pin-sized revolution has been born, the water balloon brigade. 11 white boys from Long Island had made its decision. "You won't go." And as I sat on my bed in the center of it all, I felt grateful, but above all, I was filled with pride. Dondry Green's story brought that childhood memory back to life. His golfing teammates, like my childhood friends, had an important decision to make, standing by their friend when we would cost them dearly. But when the time came to decide, no one hesitated. "Let's get out of here," one of them whispered. They just turned and walked toward the van. Dondry told us they didn't debate, and younger players joined us without looking back. Dondry was astounded by the response of his friends and the people of Louisiana. The whole state was outraged and tried to make it right. The Louisiana House of Representatives proclaimed a Dondry Green Day and passed legislation permitting lawsuits for damages, attorney's fees, and court costs against any private facility that invites a thief, then bars any number because of this. As Dondry concluded, his eyes glistened with tears. "I love my thoughts and my teammates for speaking by me," he said. "It goes to show that there are always good people who will not give in to the perverted. The kind of love they show to me, that they will conquer hatred every time." My friends too had shown that kind of love. As we sat in a hotel, a chaperone came in waving an envelope. "Boys," he shouted, "I have just bought 13 tickets to the Senators Tigers game. Anybody want to go?" The room erupted in cheers. Not one of us had ever been to a professional baseball game in a real baseball park. On the way to the stadium, we grew silent as our driver paused before the Lincoln Memorial. For one long moment, I stared through the marble pillars at Mr. Lincoln bathed in that warm, yellow light. There was still no smile and no sign of hope in his sad and tired eyes. We here highly resolved that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. In his words and in his life, Lincoln has made it clear that freedom is not free. Every time the color of a person's skin keeps him out of an amusement park or off-country club fairway, the war for freedom begins again. Our hotel was not far from the White House. My roommate was Frank Miller, the son of a businessman. We here highly resolved that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. For one long moment I stared through the marble pillars at Mr. Lincoln bathed in that warm, yellow light. There was still no smile and no sign of hope in his sad and tired eyes. In his words and in his life, Lincoln has made it clear that freedom is not free.